Good afternoon, children. Hope you all are studying very well and keeping in pace with whatever videos are uploaded in geography. We are still in the first chapter. So far, we have completed about resource. I have also done the land use classification and also the causes for land degradation and the remedial measures. This part is very important, that is the causes of land degradation and the remedial measures for land degradation. So special attention must be put to it. Now next come to the almost the last part of your first chapter, that is soil as a resource. Now, soil is the cover of the crust. The other name for crust is lithosphere. And the crust is made up of rocks. Now, we cannot live on the rocks itself, on the rocky surface. So, the soil provides it a cover. And this soil is layers of sand, silt and clay formed by the breakdown of the mother rock or the parent material. And it's a very slow process, that is the breakdown of the rocks and breaking into smaller and smaller till it gets finer particles and form soil. Soil is the cover of the crust. So because it is forming continuously, it is a renewable resource. Although the rate of renewability is very slow, it takes almost millions of years for formation of a layer of soil just 1 centimeter thick. So it is the most important renewable resource, one of the most important renewable resource for all of us, and it is also considered a living system. Why living system? Because it supports plant growth. The roots of the plant are living. So it is considered a living system. Not only the roots of the plant, there are so many microorganisms, there are so many burrowing animals, those who live in this soil. And apart from that, different life forms flourishes on the surface of the soil. So, this soil is always considered a living system. Now, this soil is very important for the human beings as well as for the plants and the animals. So, it is considered as a living system. Next, let us come to the soil formation process. Now, soil formation you have studied in class 8 in details. I will just touch this portion because we will be doing the other parts related to soil. Now, there are different factors like, for example, relief, then parent material, climate, uh, uh, we have our vegetation and other life forms, and time as the most important factors that helps in formation of soil. Now, how relief is important? See, relief is important because relief affects the drainage of any area and also the rate of erosion. If the land is sloping, the big pieces of rocks will always be drained down, will be taken down the slope, and on its journey towards the plain, the rocks break down into smaller and smaller pieces. So generally we find the mountain slopes have thin layer of soil, whereas the flat land where the rocks or the finer particles of rocks are deposited, they have thicker layer of soil. Then comes our parent material. Parent material is important because it gives character to the soil. Just like we genetically or in our looks, we get some characters from our parents. Similarly, the soil gets its character from the mother rock. Like for example, its color will be the same, the constituents will be the same, that is the composition of the mother rock, will be reflected in the soil type also. Now in case of climate also, here sunlight and that is the heat and the water, that is the rainwater, these two are very important element in breakdown of the rock. Generally what happens when the rocks are exposed to heat of the sun, and at night when the temperature falls, the rock expands and contracts, and it is a daily phenomena. Daily the rocks swell up during daytime, and at night it contracts, because the rocks is having mineral, and different minerals have different rate of expansion and contraction. This uh, leads to stresses in the rock, and cracks develop in the rock. This crack slowly then helps in breakdown of the rocks. Sometimes what happens in the desert area, the rocks which are exposed, now the upper layer just comes out, then the next layer that is exposed, that comes out. So this process happens like the peeling of the onion, and it is known as exfoliation. Similarly, in case of water also, the rainwater becomes acidically charged when it is passing through the atmosphere, and it falls on the rocks and reacts with the rocks. Or suppose in the high mountains, when the water accumulates in the cracks of the rock and then it freezes at night, or in the winter season, the volume expands and it exerts pressure on the rocks, and it helps in its breakdown. Then comes our vegetation and other life forms. Now in case of vegetation, the root of the plants that grow in the rocks itself exerts pressure and helps in its breakdown. Sometimes the chemical components in the roots react with the layers of the rock and helps in its breakdown, chemical decomposition of the rocks. And finally we have time. Here one thing is important: burrowing animals also have a role to play in the breakdown of the rocks. Finally we have time. Time gives maturity to a soil. A layer of soil which is not disturbed will have all the soil layers, and if it is disturbed by human activities like farming, construction, mining, then you will find that the upper layer and the lower layers may be missing, maybe even below that. So time gives maturity to the soil. Apart from this, there are other factors like the action of running water, glaciers, or the wind. These are the erosive agents which carry the huge rock downstream or different areas, and on the process during this time, during their journey to some other area, the rocks, they rub against each other and they break down into smaller and smaller pieces. So apart from the 5 main factors, we have these activities of the decomposers also, of the running waters, glaciers, which helped in breakdown of the rocks and the formation of soil. Now soil consists of both organic and inorganic materials. Organic material, from the term itself you can make out that it is obtained from the dead remains of plants and animals. So this is the humus. The second one, that is inorganic material, are the broken pieces of rock. Inorganic are the broken pieces of rock material, and organic are the humus which is obtained from the dead remains of plants and animals. Now, on the basis of our soil formation, color, thickness, texture, age, chemical and physical properties, we classify our Indian soils. Now here chemical and physical properties I have to specify. Physical properties are all those properties which we can differentiate by seeing or touching, whereas the chemical properties are the chemical constituents. Like, for example, in case of physical properties, we can easily see the color, we can touch the soil and can find out the texture, that is whether the particles are very fine or it is very coarse. So physical properties are those properties which we can easily identify by seeing or by touching. Whereas in case of chemical properties of the soil, we have to test the soil in the laboratories and find out the chemical composition of the soil. So different soil has different kind of chemical composition because they are derived from different parent material or the mother rock. Now generally we have different types of soil, but a broad classification is based on whether the soil is transported or it is at the place of its origin, that is where the mother rock is found. So broadly we classify our soil into two categories, that is the transported soil and the residual soil. Now the soil which is taken far away from its original place and then deposited are the transported soil. Like in case of mountain soil, the glaciers, they carry the soil forward and deposit it, so it is transported soil. The alluvial soil is taken downstream by the rivers and then deposited. Similarly, in case of arid or desert soil also, the wind blows it and deposits it elsewhere, so that is also a transported soil. Whereas the black soil, the laterite soil and the red soil are found in their place of origin, that is where the mother rock is found, there itself it is found. So it is residual soil, that is it is found where the mother rock is there. So now we will study our different soil types in detail. Now first let us see the map that is there in your page 9 about the major soil types. Now from the map itself you can make out that we have 6 major soil types. In fact, in our country there are many different soil types also which are subgroups, but in your class 10 we will do the 6 major soil types of our country. The first is the forest and mountain soil. So the forested areas of our country are in Jammu Kashmir, in Sikkim, in Arunachal Pradesh. This is the main area occupied by the forest and mountain soil. Then our alluvial soil occupies the entire northern plain. A little bit also enters into our Gujarat and Rajasthan. It extends into the northeast, that is the Brahmaputra plain, and also our eastern coastal plain is occupied by the alluvial soil. Then comes our red and yellow soil. Red and yellow soil occupies a large area of the plateau. In the northeastern part also we have this red and yellow soil. Black soil is there again, covering a huge part of the plateau area, Deccan Plateau. And then in Gujarat also we are having this black soil. Then we come to laterite soil. Laterite soil is not much. We have the western coastal plain, and there are some traces also of laterite soil in some parts of our country. In the northeast also we are having this laterite soil, and then the arid soil is there, of course, in the desert area. These are the main areas of the soil in our country. Now we will start the first soil type, that is alluvial soil. As I showed you in the map, children, alluvial soil covers the most extensive part of our country, hence it is the most widespread soil of our country. Now this soil has been deposited by the three major Himalayan river system, that is Indus and its tributaries, Ganga and its tributaries, Brahmaputra and its tributaries have deposited this soil in the entire northern plain, and also along the eastern coastal plain also this soil occupies its area. Now this soil, as I've said, is a transported soil. So it has been formed by the breakdown of the rocks that are carried by the rivers forward. So it consists of different proportion of sand, silt and clay. Now when I say different proportion of sand, silt and clay, that means in some parts of the soil there is more sand, in some part there may be silt, in some part there may be clay, or at places there will be mixture of three. So different, there is no uniformity that the entire soil will consist of only sand or only clay. So there is inconsistency. That means some parts may have a mixture of sand and clay, some may be sand and silt, or some may be only sand portion more. So I have said it consists of different proportion of sand, silt and clay. Now when the proportion of constituent is not constant, that means the color also varies from place to place. The texture also varies from place to place. Texture means when we touch, we can feel whether it is fine grained or coarse grained. Now the areas where sandy proportion is more, it will be coarse grained. The areas where clay proportion is more, there it is fine grained. Now the western part like Punjab, Haryana, you have studied last year, they contain Bhangar soil. So that is coarse grain. In the western part of this northern plain, there is alluvial soil, no doubt, but it has more proportion of sand. And in the eastern part, there is more proportion of clay. So the proportion of sand, silt and clay varies from place to place. The color also varies from place to place. The texture also varies from place to place. And the water holding capacity also varies from place to place. The parts which has more sand has less water holding capacity. The parts which have more clay has more water holding capacity. Now here what happens, children, when the soil or when the rock gets broken into pieces, it first gets deposited at the foothills of the mountain. Now the place where suddenly the slope changes is known as break off slope, and here by the deposited material of the rivers, a plain builds up, and this plain is known as pigment plains. So the plains that is built up just at the foothills of the mountain by the material deposited by the river is known as pigment plain. Now here, children, it is not necessary that the soil has to be fine grained. Generally, the soil of the pigment plains are coarse grained because the size of the rocks are bigger. There may be boulders also. So the plain built up at the foothills of the mountain is known as pigment plain. In our country, it is known by different names. We have studied about the duars, the terai, and then chors. Now duars, of course, duars and chors are new term for you. Terai you have studied. Terai is generally the name given to the foothills of this Himalayas, the plain at the foothills of the Himalayas in the northern part, that is in the northern plain. And duars is a term used for the northeastern part at the foothills of the Himalayas. Duars is the name used for northeastern part, and terai is the name used in the northern plain, northern part of northern plain and south of Nepal, of course. And chors is the term used for the plain built up in Himachal Pradesh. So Chos for Himachal Pradesh, Terai for the northern part of northern plain, which lies to the south of Nepal, and for the northeastern India we have the name Duars. Now, classification on the basis of age. This you have studied in class 9th also, that alluvial soils are classified on the basis of age, and that is Bhangar and Khadar. Bhangar is the old alluvial soil, and here it is more sandy, there are kankar nodules, it is less fertile and needs lot of application of fertilizer for cultivation. And our Khadar is the fine grained, which is fertile, it is clay in nature, and it receives fresh deposit of flood and flood water almost every year during floods, and it receives very good amount of silt. The silt that is deposited due to flooding in the Khadar makes it very fertile, and it is intensively cultivated. There are different kinds of soil nutrients like potash, phosphoric acid and lime, and that is used for growing different varieties of crops. And as we all know, the northern plain has been settled by human beings since the ancient civilization. So this area is intensively cultivated and densely populated. But in the drier parts, the soil has become alkaline and needs proper treatment and irrigation. I discussed about soil alkalinity in my previous video, that how can a soil turns alkaline. Sometimes what happens, the farmers give huge quantity of water, then the groundwater will rise up on the surface, and then the salt deposition will make it alkaline in nature. Sometimes in the drier areas, lot of fertilizers is also used, and this fertilizers contains ash, which is rich in calcium oxide, which also affects the soil salinity and alkalinity, or else the soil may consist of sodium carbonate or sodium bicarbonate, which also makes it alkaline in nature. In such cases, the soil needs to be treated properly for cultivation of crops. Now next, let's come to the black soil. Now black soil is a residual soil. Alluvial soil was a transported soil. Black soil is a residual soil, that it is found where its mother rock is present, where the parent material is present. So from the name itself you can get the color of the soil, that it is black in color, and it is formed due to action of the climatic elements on the parent material. Now who is the parent material of black soil? The parent material of black soil is basalt. Now basalt is an igneous rock, and this rock you have seen in the railway tracks, or when we construct houses or buildings, you will find that the small pieces of rocks that is used for construction, those are the basalt rocks. So if you hold a piece of basalt rock in your hand, you will find that the particles are closely, tightly packed, and this rock has deformed due to the volcanic eruption that has occurred here. Now children, when volcanic eruption occurs, what happens? Sometimes the lava flows on the earth's surface. When it is flowing on the earth's surface, it comes in contact with the air and cools down. Now if it cools down very fast, then the rocks crystallizes also very fast. That is, the particles are very, very fine grained, and this fine grained particles is found in the basalt rock, and hence this basalt rock is clay soil, has given rise to clay soil. The particles are very, very fine grained. It is black in color. You can pick up the rocks very easily from the railway tracks. You will find that it is a hard rock, it's a igneous rock, and it is totally black in color, and it is fine grained, and it gives rises to clay soil. And when it breaks down, the soil obviously is black color. Now this soil is very good for growing cotton, ideal for growing cotton, and hence it is known also as rigwood soil or black cotton soil. It covers a major part of the Deccan Plateau. The Deccan Plateau is made up of lava flow, so a major part of Deccan Plateau is formed of this black soil. It has high moisture holding capacity. So clay soil always has high moisture holding capacity. So it has a high moisture holding capacity, and its mineral constituents are calcium carbonate, magnesium, potash and lime. But it is poor in phosphoric contents. See here children, the black soil is poor in phosphoric contents, but alluvial soil contains phosphoric acid. So here there is a difference, rich in calcium carbonate, magnesium, potash and lime, but poor in phosphoric contents. Now this black soil is very sticky when wet. So immediately after the rains, the first rain, or suppose after the great summer heat, there is some rain in the form of pre-monsoon shower. At that time, immediately the soil must be tilled, and if this is not done, it will become very hard and sticky, and the plant roots won't be able to penetrate into the soil. Now children, this clay soil, you'll be surprised, is used for making all these clay toys. Different clay toys are sold in the market or in some fair, mela. You must have seen that they make these apples, oranges, dolls, and they color it and paint it. So it is made of clay soil. So it becomes very hard when it dries up. So it's mainly used for making toys. Now once the soil dries up after the rain, when the soil dries up, it develops crack on the surface. So this also is a very important character, because when it's developed cracks, there is circulation of air in the roots of the plant, and this is known as aeration. Aeration, A-E-R-A-T-I-O-N, aeration, and this greatly helps in plant growth. So it will only help if the plant root is penetrating into the soil, and that is possible when we are tilling the soil immediately after the pre-monsoon shower or the first rain. And when the soil dries up, it will develop cracks in the soil. So wherever the amount of clay in the soil is more, it can be the clay portion of alluvial soil also. Like for example, the areas close to our school, you will find when the waterlogged areas, it dries up, it develops cracks on the surface because the soil has more proportion of clay in it. Now black soil is entirely clay soil. Alluvial soil has all the three, sand, silt and clay, but black soil has more proportion of clay soil, and it is best used for cultivation of crops like cotton and sugarcane. Now next day children, we will do the other soil types, but first we will take down the main points, and then we will also write the difference between the black soil and the alluvial soil. And I also have homework, like after every topic I give you some questions. I have given questions today also, so you will please write down the answers of those questions after going through the notes. Even if you are not having book, it's not a problem, because I am giving each and every point, explaining everything in details in my notes. Thank you. Now children, coming to the first part, soil is a resource. most important renewable natural resource, and it's a living system. How it's a living system? It supports plant growth and different life forms flourish within it and on the surface of the soil. Then comes factors of soil formation, relief, time, parent rock, climate, vegetation and other life forms. Other factors are action of running water, wind, glaciers, activities of decomposers, changes in temperature, chemical and organic changes. And I have discussed every point in my lecture. Now the soil has organic contents as well as inorganic contents. Organic content is the humus, inorganic content is the rock broken into sand, silt and clay. Then coming to soil classification, we have two groups, transported and residual. In transported, we have alluvial, arid, forest and mountain soil. In residual, we have black, laterite, red and yellow soil. Coming to our alluvial soil, this is a transported soil. Most widespread soil of India, deposited by three Himalayan river systems, covers the northern plain and the eastern coastal plain, made up of various proportion of sand, silt and clay. Color and texture of soil varies from place to place depending on the constituent. According to age, it is classified as old alluvial, that is Bhangar, new alluvial, Khadar, presence of kankar in Bhangar and fine particles in Khadar. Most fertile soil with adequate proportion of potash, phosphoric acid and lime. Most intensively cultivated soil of India because variety of crops are grown since ancient time. And lastly, in drier areas, this soil is alkaline and needs proper treatment and irrigation. Then I have made the diagram of the break-up slope, and it is the upper part of the river valley. The soil is coarser in texture, then it becomes medium and fine-grained in the last stage. The plain is known as Speedman Plain, also known as Speedman Plain, that is plains at the foothills of mountain that is built up by the deposited material of the river. So other names are Duars is the term used for Northeast India, Chors is the term used for Himachal Pradesh, and Terai north of Ganga plain, that is the plain area at the foothills of the Himalayas north of the Ganga plain is the Terai. Then coming to the black soil is a residual soil. It's black in color, then formed due to action of climate on parent material. Thirdly, parent material is basalt and so soil is fine-grained. Clay soil, and ideal for growing cotton, covers major part of Deccan Plateau which is made of lava flows. High moisture holding capacity, rich in calcium carbonate, magnesium, potash and lime, but poor in phosphoric contents. Next, sticky when wet, so needs immediate ploughing after the first shower in rainy or pre-monsoon season. Develops crack during hot weather that helps in air circulation. The term is aeration in soil, best used for growing cotton and sugarcane. Now, coming to the difference between the black alluvial soil and black soil. So in alluvial soil, transported soil, black soil is residual soil. Alluvial soil consists of various proportion of sand, silt and clay. Black soil consists of only clay particles. Alluvial soil, texture and color varies from place to place, whereas in black soil it is fine-grained black in color. Then in alluvial soil, water holding capacity depends upon soil texture, whereas this one has high water holding capacity. Alluvial soil covers the plain areas, black soil covers the plateau areas. In alluvial soil, according to age, it is classified as khadar and bhangar. In black soil, there is no such classification. In alluvial soil consists of several nutrients like potash, phosphoric acid and lime, whereas black soil consists of potash, lime but poor in phosphoric acid. Now children, I have a homework of 4-5 questions. The first question is, why is soil considered a living system? The second one, mention the main soil formation factors. Third, what are the main constituents of a soil body? That is, you have to write the components. That is, what is there within a soil body. Fourth, define Speedman Plain. Give some example of Speedman Plains in India. Fifthly, why do the soil texture, color and water holding capacity varies from place to place in alluvial soil? And lastly, how is black soil formed and what does it consist of? Now, I have given the question covering both these soil types, and as we proceed to the last part, I will have some questions for you. So from the beginning itself, children, I had been giving questions to you all for every topic that I have done. So write the answers, and if you have any doubt, you can post a query any time in your class or in my personal mobile number as well. Thank you, children.